to talk some Michigan Wolverines because Jim Harbaugh is a polarizing guy. Finally broke through though last year with the Wolverines in his time at his alma mater in Ann Arbor. Beat the Ohio State Buckeyes like a rented mule in one of the biggest rivalry games in all of college football. As they were able to win the Big Ten championship for the first time under his leadership and reach the college football playoff. Now, they were resoundingly whipped by Georgia, but they had a great season, no question about it. Took steps in the right direction. He's got a brand new contract there, and there's some ties now to our community here in Huntsville and North Alabama because they came up here and signed one of the best student athletes in our area, and a guy that was really kind of, I think, under the radar his whole career from a national perspective, but we knew here how good he was. But Deuce Spurlock, a receiver and linebacker for the Madison Academy Mustangs, really a 3-year starter, a stalwart, an all-state player. Deuce is now signed with Michigan. He's going into his freshman year, and we're going to kind of see how he's settling in Ann Arbor. I mean, what kind of role could he potentially play in the maize and blue this year? And we're going to talk to a first-time guest, Anthony Broome of the Wolverine on 3, part of on3sports.com. He's going to join us in this hour, and we're going to we'll be able to talk some Michigan with him. He's going to take a little time here in a few minutes to join us, and we look forward to talking some Michigan Wolverines with him. And it should be some great conversation because, again, Deuce is a guy that played a lot of great football for Bob Godsey, and of course, as you know, our sister station ESPN 97.7, The Zone, has been for a long time. Been the home of the Madison Academy Mustangs, and he was such a big part of that. And we look forward to talking some Wolverines with Anthony Broome, who told us he could give us some time this morning. And we're going to talk fall camp, see what their outlook is this year. Can they win the Big Ten for a second consecutive year? And can they beat Ohio State? Because Ohio State seems to be the prohibitive favorite there, and most people believe could be on a collision course with someone like the University of Alabama to play for the national championship. But Michigan was undervalued a year ago and had a very, very good football team. And, what kind of losing guys like Aiden Hutchinson, who was a Heisman finalist. Maybe some had him as the National Defensive Player of the Year, the second pick in the draft to the Detroit Lions. They have to replace, a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball and lost some skilled guys offensively as well. So we're going to talk to Anthony Broome and see what his thoughts are on Michigan going into this season and in recruiting. Right now in the 2023 class, Michigan's class is ranked, I believe, 24th in the On3 ranking. So they're in the top 25. What kind of upward mobility may they be able to have there with the class? How will it rank by the end of the season? We'll have to wait and see. But certainly we strongly believe that Michigan is still going to be potentially a top 10, top 15 team this year. And we're excited for Deuce Spurlock's, chance to go to one of the most storied programs in college football and have an impact. And it's neat to see a program of the, national recognition and pub, and panache, I guess you could say, because Michigan still is a national brand, to come down here to our community, to the state of Alabama, and aggressively recruit one of our student athletes, and Deuce Spurlock now putting on the maize and blue. So we're going to ask Anthony about him, and we're going to talk about Yabi Anoma too. What an interesting, development that was, yesterday. Yabi Anoma, a guy that, 4 years ago was when he committed and signed with the University of Alabama. 5 years ago, I guess we should say though, at the end of the 2017 season, when Alabama beat the Georgia Bulldogs with the 2nd and 26 play, Yabi was considered a top 5 player nationally overall in his senior class, maybe the best defensive player in that class, playing for Biff Poggi at St. Francis Academy. And he was a late bloomer in football. He was really a basketball player until he transferred to St. Francis, and then became the best pass rusher in the country. Had a lot of expectations placed upon him upon arriving at Alabama. Had some maturity issues off the field. Eventually left that Alabama program to go to Houston and spent some time with Dana Holgorsen, but didn't really play at Houston as well. And then ends up at UT Martin playing for that program. For Coach Simpson, who's, of course, Ty Simpson's father. Ty Simpson, the five-star quarterback now at the University of Alabama, and Coach Simpson, they developed Ayabi. Ayabi matured some and had 6 sacks for them a year ago, was an all-OVC type player, and was on some NFL draft radars if you read the outstanding work of the National College Football Reporter for On3 Sports, and that's Matt Zenitz, formerly the sports writer of the year for AL.com, friend of ESPN 97.7 The Zone. He does an outstanding job covering college football from a national perspective, and and it was interesting because Yabi's name was mentioned. Now Yabi has got a degree from UT Martin. He graduated, and at the last possible minute, very late in the summer, he's enrolled at Michigan. He had gone into the transfer portal recently, but now he's in their staff directory, and it looks like Ayabi Anoma, who was heavily pursued by the Wolverines, by the way, if memory serves, out of high school, with his 5-star status as one of the best recruits in the country. It's now come full circle, and Ayabi Anoma will spend his last year of college eligibility, it looks like, in Ann Arbor, playing for this revamped coaching staff with new offensive and defensive coordinators for Michigan as Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines try to repeat as Big Ten champions. So in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Anthony Broome of the Wolverine on 3. And he's going to detail these coaching changes for Michigan, what their expectations are, and really they're always high in Ann Arbor. But what kind of impact could do Spurlock have, and Ayabi Anoma too, because Ayabi, if he's there's been never a question about his talent. It's always been kind of the maturity and the off-field aspect. But again, Ayabi Anoma, that's a fascinating journey though, to see him matriculate to the Big Ten and to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we were able to track him for a while at the University of Alabama, and we'll certainly be following Deuce Spurlock's career after he had such a great one for 3 seasons under Bob Godsey, who's now headed into year 4 at the helm of the Madison Academy Mustangs. And by the way, later tonight, you will be able to hear the North Alabama High School Football Scoreboard Show presented by Woody Anderson Ford. Will start at 8:30 here on our Blitz Sports Radio stream, and then it will switch over to ESPN 97.7 The Zone. But you will be able to start hearing updates, some of them coming from Bill Washington Stadium and the Madison Academy Mustangs, the alma mater of Deuce Spurlock. The Mustangs will take on the Deschler Tigers and Patrick Malone and Bob Godsey, the 2 coaches in this matchup. They joined us on ESPN 97.7 The Zone's Talking Ball with Scott Tyson and I this morning as we previewed our first full week of high school football in our state. Had a lot of results come in last night. And speaking of recruiting, this first full weekend nationally is going to have some outstanding matchups when it comes to talent on the field. If you're an Alabama fan, especially when you talk about the Freedom Bowl in Milton, Georgia, that's going to be the number 1 team in Alabama, the 3-time defending 7A state champions, Mark Freeman's Thompson Warriors. They are loaded with talent, led by Peter Woods, the Clemson commitment. Peter Woods, arguably the top prospect in the state of Alabama senior-wise in a loaded 2023 cycle. You've also got Tony Mitchell, the safety in corner, who will probably play the nickel spot in college. He's committed to the University of Alabama. Stanton Ramil, the right tackle, he's committed to Michigan State, and Mel Tucker. Just a star-studded team for Thompson, as always. They've got a great football team, and I know that Jeremiah Alexander was a great player for Thompson last year, signed with the University of Alabama. We've seen Amari Kite, the backup left tackle for the Tide. He played at Thompson. There's been a ton of talent come out of that program in the last couple of years, no question about it. And Thompson's going to be loaded again. And Buford is considered the number one team in Georgia. They've got Justice Haynes, one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the 2023 cycle. He's committed to the University of Alabama, but his father is the great Veron Haynes, who is, of course, the hobnail boot touchdown against Tennessee from David Green in his days with the Georgia Bulldogs and Mark Richt. But Veron's son Justice is going to matriculate, it looks like, to Alabama. So that's going to be a lot of talent on that field. And Buford's got a lot of underclassmen, a lot of sophomores and juniors with Power 5 offers, some by the University of Alabama. So a lot of talent on the field for that Freedom Bowl matchup with Buford and of course, Thompson. So be following Ben Thomas from AL.com. He will have full coverage of that and on social media. So just watch the Thompson Warrior feed, too, on Twitter. They do an outstanding job. Warrior Nation, keeping up with Mark Freeman's program. We hope to have Mark Freeman potentially as a guest on the Blitz. Love to have him and talk high school football and talk about his program. He stands for all the right things. He's done a great job in his coaching career with Bessemer Academy, certainly, and then with the Spanish Fort Toros and the Thompson Warriors. And we've had him on Talking Ball before, and when he's brought his football team here to our community. He's played Sparkman High School before, certainly, and played just a national schedule since he's got to Thompson, and he's built that program into maybe one of the top 5 in all of high school football nationally. So, and they certainly will be having a huge test this weekend against Buford, and we'll be monitoring that game. And that's probably I'd say the top matchup of the opening weekend of high school football throughout the country, because really this is when it starts for real. We had some games last night, including Muscle Shoals Trojans and Scott Baisden, also a very consistent program in North Alabama. They come over here to Madison, and they soundly defeat the Bob Jones Patriots and Kelvis White. Kelvis, of course, the former Cortland Chief and Alabama offensive lineman, but they fall 31-7 to the Muscle Shoals Trojans. So a big win for Scott Baisden's team as Muscle Shoals is off to another strong start. And Lee Osment, former Alabama safety, his Arab Knights, 47-14. A little bit surprised by that margin at Albertville. Chip English, did a great job at Grissom rebuilding their program. He's trying to re-establish Albertville in 7A Region 4, and they fall 47-14 in their opener. But a nice win for Arab, no question about that, and a big win for them. And so we're going to have a lot of great action tonight, and then you'll be able to hear the Randolph Raiders. I'll be doing the color for them as Coach David Lloyd in year 3. A lot of expectations for Randolph. They have a young man, Nick Strong. I'm sure we're going to feature him on the Recruiting Blitz here on Blitz Sports Radio. One of the best players, I think, in North Alabama, an extremely underrated young man. Great academics off the field, but also a great football player, a guy that's very versatile, can be a running back, can be a receiver, kick returner, can do a lot of different things for you for the Randolph Raiders, and they will open the season tonight against Drew Phillips out on the road at West Morgan, so we're looking forward to that contest. And again, so we're going to have a lot of great high school football action, but in a few minutes, though, Anthony Broom is going to join us, and we're going to talk the maize and blue of the Michigan Wolverines as the Wolverines coming off of a college football playoff berth, and they signed a top 10 national class last year, no doubt about that. Deuce Spurlock was part of it, and I think he's going to end up being a linebacker in his career, but interested to see, eventually what position he plays for the Michigan Wolverines and what the outlook is for his career early. But certainly I think Deuce Spurlock, I know the recruiting services only had him as a 3-star, but I thought he was underrated. And again, they signed him as an athlete, but anxious to kind of see, where they see him fitting in and what they see him doing with the Michigan Wolverines going forward. and he was a guy that had a great career, played on both sides of the ball, but really made his name as a linebacker for Madison Academy. And I know he was very excited to go to Michigan and have a chance to, continue his career at a program of that stature. And we definitely want to catch up with Anthony Broome and find out, where Deuce Spurlock fits in the plans this year for Michigan, and where this Michigan program is, because going into last year there was some heat on Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There was a lot of pressure because he'd not had success against Ohio State, had not beat their biggest rival, but he certainly did that last year in resounding style, and now he's got a new contract. There's a lot of optimism. And it's funny how that can just do a complete 180 when you reach the college football playoff and you win your league and you finally vanquish the Ohio State Buckeyes, who I believe they had lost to 16 years in a row, which that just boggles your mind because of a program of the stature of Michigan. So, but again, we're going to talk with Anthony Broome here shortly, and we'll do that when we come back from this break on the Blitz and on Blitz Sports Radio, the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. When we come back, Anthony Broome of the Wolverine on 3sports.com, going to talk some Michigan from live from Ann Arbor before they kick off their season with Jim Harbaugh. And we're going to talk some Deuce Spurlock and some recruiting and some fall camp for one of the best programs in the country, the Michigan Wolverines, next on the Recruiting Blitz.
This is Wes Neighbors with Philip with Eagle Insulation, and we have an announcement to make.
Yes, Wes, we are now Eagle Masonry and Insulation. Still a place to call for your installation needs, but now we offer masonry services.
What kind of masonry projects can you handle?
Wes, no job is too big, no job is too small. We can do renovations, new construction, outdoor fireplaces, fire pits, brick landscape borders.
Well, when you came out to my house, you did both the insulation and masonry at the same time. You guys did rock for me, you did brick for me, and you insulated my house. That's usually done at the same time that you're building a house.
Absolutely. It really capitalizes on two services you need at the same time, and you can get one company to handle both of those.
Philip with Eagle Insulation will come out, do your installation. He'll do your masonry. They do a great job. They guarantee your work. Check out more online at insulatedwitheagle.com and schedule your free examination today. 256-755-1556.
Thanks, Wes.
Do you have discomfort in your legs? Varicose veins can affect not only how your legs look, but how they feel. Symptoms of varicose veins include pain, swelling, aching, heaviness, and fatigue. Dr. Tracy Lowry of Best Vein Care of Huntsville can diagnose and treat your varicose veins with the latest minimally invasive techniques. Diagnosis and treatment is covered by most insurances. Call 256-715-7151 to schedule your free screening. Go to bestveincarehuntsville.com.
I'm here with Stan McDonald of the Stanton Law Firm. Stan, I guess you are the Stanton in the law firm.
Yes, Wes, that's me, and we started the Stanton Law Firm so that myself and 4 other attorneys with me can help clients litigate, negotiate, and creatively solve legal and real estate problems.
Now, Stan, you grew up on a family farm in this area and have made a name closing on houses and land with your closing company, Jacob Title.
I grew up on a farm which used to be in the country. That plus having closed on so many homes and farms, one of my colleagues started referring to me as a classic dirt lawyer. Now, I didn't know how to take that at first, that tag, but I realized that's exactly what I do and what I am.
And I know the attorneys at Stanton Law Firm are regular listeners, and we plan to have you on periodically. You and I have seen have impacted this community.
Stay tuned, and you may hear about friends like Steve Booker, Clarence Johnson, Thomas Boyd, and even a few of those offensive line hogs like Hoss Johnson, and maybe you remember some other of those guys too.
I remember Clarence Johnson. He beat us one year. He was unbelievable.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
I'm business analyst Jill Schlesinger with a small business success story sponsored by the U.S. Postal Service. Stitch Fix offers clothing and accessories for women on the go, selected by personal stylists and delivered right to your door. Chief Operating Officer Julie Bornstein says, our entire business is centered on making shopping more convenient, so it was vital to select a shipping provider that could provide that level of service. Julie knows that when you rely on the U.S. Postal Service, your business becomes their business. The U.S. Postal Service, priority you.
Why should you trust in the U.S. Postal Service to deliver for your business? Because when you ship with us, your business becomes our business. Whether you have 3 employees or 300, you'll have a nationwide fleet of delivery trucks working for you. We make more e-commerce deliveries to homes than anyone else in the country. See what we can do for you at usps.com/forbusiness. The United States Postal Service. Priority, you.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. I'm D Squared, Drew DeArmond. This is the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared, and we're going to talk recruiting 5 days a week from 9 to 10 a.m. with you. This is our third week already we're about to complete with the Recruiting Blitz, and we appreciate the support here on the Blitz Sports Radio. And we're going to talk some Big Ten and Michigan today. We did that in the first segment, and we're going to have a first-time guest with us now. He's taken the time to join us. He does an outstanding job as the Wolverine beat writer for Wolverine on 3, and that's Anthony Broom. He's been good enough to join us this morning on the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. And again, we have a very close tie now to this Michigan program with Deuce Spurlock and the Ayabi Anoma story, considering we tracked him at Alabama for a while, and he is matriculated. And this guy, on our next guest, broke that story yesterday and did an outstanding job. But Anthony Broom, welcome to the show. Welcome to Huntsville, Alabama. How are you this morning?
Of course. Thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for having me. It's always good to connect with you guys down in SEC country. So thank you for the kind words on the way in.
Absolutely. And, of course, we knew we were going to start tracking, Deuce in the program at Michigan. And, again, as I said in the opening segment, I think he was underrated in the state of Alabama. And really, I think COVID may have affected it a little bit. There was no combines, no camps. He wasn't able to be seen as much, but Michigan certainly found him. And I know he was very excited about the offer and excited for the opportunity to play in a program with the stature of the Wolverines. We don't see Michigan come down south a ton. I know Jim Harbaugh has done it, though, since he's got there. But for our listeners who followed Deuce very closely, and he was a great athlete on both sides of the ball, how has he progressed in his freshman year going into his first one in the Big Ten for Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, I actually had a chance to talk to Deuce back in, I think it was February. We did a recruiting edition of our magazine. That's not typically my beat with our site, but I was able to talk to and get to know Deuce a little bit. And first and foremost, just the thing that stood out to me was just a good guy, a good, I hesitate to say kid. These guys are young men now, but he certainly, attitude-wise, fits the bill. At Michigan, it's going to be one of those, like I can say this about Michigan coaches. I think they feel similarly to the way you do, where this was they think this was defined for them. He wasn't super highly ranked, but it's a guy where, even our recruiting guy, E.J. Holland, went down there a few times to watch him, and he was impressed with what he saw. He saw what Michigan did. So, the thing with Michigan is that, I believe, and if I'm misspeaking here, that's on me, but I think that he was a summer enrollee, so
yeah,
he didn't get the spring football that the rest of the guys got. So it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for him to see the field, early on. I know there's some things they definitely want to work on. They like the toolbox there. They like what he brings to the table. But, Michigan's also sort of, I won't say thin at linebacker, but there's not a lot of proven depth there. So depending on how this camp has gone, Deuce isn't every time you ask about freshmen, we usually get the stock answer that, these guys are progressing. They're progressing. Their time will come soon. You get stuff like that. But with Michigan is really kind of an injury away at linebacker from things getting kind of, I don't know if interesting is the word, but it kind of is wide open from there. So would I be surprised if he's able to work his way into a role? I wouldn't. Jim Harbaugh and his staff have always shown that, if they think you're one of the best players on the team, they'll play you on special teams. They'll play you, in a sub-package role. They don't you can be more mindful of the red shirts now that you get the 4 games to play. But if they think you can play, they think there's a role for you, they're going to play you. And so, like I said, I think he has a shot before his college career is up. I don't think that his time is now, so to speak, but I do know that they're excited about him, and they feel like he's a diamond in the rough.
Well, how much pressure was on Jim Harbaugh going into last year? Because it was highly documented about his contract situation, and of course that they, it was adjusted, so to speak. And then, they had the long losing streak. He had not beaten Ohio State, but then they come out, they win the Big Ten championship, they go to the college football playoff, they win 12 games. How big was last season for Harbaugh?
I mean, that was euphoric for everyone. That was euphoric for the fan base. It was euphoric for the program. I mean, obviously, last year, it still kind of felt like people were walking on eggshells going into last year. He had his pay cut in half. And the message that I took that as was that if your team doesn't perform this year and we have another crappy season, you're gone. And I think that I don't know if it was the fear of that or whatever it is, that fueled that entire program. And with their back up against the wall more than it's ever been in the last 10 years or so, they came out swinging, and they finally got over the hump. So there's, the biggest thing was, I know people aren't happy with how the game against Georgia went, but it was almost like once they beat Ohio State and then the following week had a coronation of sorts and beating Iowa in the Big Ten title game, that was a huge sigh of relief for everyone. And now, the message is they want more. Everyone wants more there now. You don't want to just get there and be like a Michigan State was or a Washington was. You want to get there and stay there, like the Alabamas, and the Ohio States, and the Georgias of the world have. So there's still pressure there, but I think the attitude up here is that last year didn't have to be a storybook season. It can really truly be the start of something that you could argue should have come 3 or 4 years ago at Michigan, but it's here now, and they like what they have over the next couple of years.
Yeah, now a restructured contract yet again, and all that money Harbaugh getting back. But the one thing coming with the price of the success is some changes in the coaching staff. Mike McDonald, the DC, goes back to Baltimore to work with John Harbaugh, take over the defense with the Ravens. Did a great job last year defensively for Michigan, and then the offensive coordinator, who we're very familiar with here at Alabama, Josh Gaddis, had been a wide receivers coach for Alabama before going to Michigan. He was, I believe, the Frank Broyles Award winner. How concerning is it to lose the coordinators? And for our listeners that potentially don't see Michigan as much, talk about the new staff, the restructured staff that Jim Harbaugh has put together.
Yeah, well, part of it too is that they're replacing 2 coordinators, but the offensive coordinators are being replaced by familiar faces, guys that were part of the program last year in Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss. So they're going to co-coordinate. I get the sense that their identity is going to stay intact. They're not going to do things super differently. And it was no disrespect to Josh Gaddis at all, but it was kind of collaborative going into last year, where everyone kind of had a say of it. So, he'll probably go do great things at Miami, but Michigan feels good about those guys too. They had a big hand in developing and crafting what that was last year. I think the play calling dynamic is still kind of being worked out. Anytime you have 2 guys with the coordinator title, there's kind of there's a bit of a balance you have to work to strike there, which they have been in camp. Defensively is probably a little bit more of a concern just because I think Mike McDonald was that good. I mean, I say this all the time. When he would come to press conferences and stuff, he had that NFL aura about him. You always got the sense that he was on borrowed time in the college game and that John Harbaugh would probably call him back eventually and bring him back to the Ravens. But, they replaced him from Jesse Minter, who was at Vanderbilt last year. And Minter is kind of, has a Baltimore Ravens background. Him and McDonald were actually seemingly the 1 and 2 candidates for the job last year. So Michigan feels good about what he brings. I mean, the scheme isn't going to change all that much. I think the great thing about what McDonald did for them is that he's making them more schematically flexible, positionally flexible, so they can kind of adapt to what they're good at. So I would say the questions are more so on defense. It has a lot more to do with what they lost, your David Ojabos, your Aiden Hutchinsons, your Daxton Hills. But overall, I mean, it seems like it's been a pretty seamless transition, and by all accounts, camp has gone really well for them.
Yeah, and Daxton Hill is another guy that we tracked closely because he was committed to Alabama before flipping to Michigan and had a really nice career for the Wolverines. You talked about Ojabo, you talked about Aiden Hutchinson, big losses there. It was the two edge guys, and Aiden, of course, was a Heisman candidate, National Defensive Player of the Year. Those are big losses. Is that one of the reasons why we see a guy like a Yabi Anoma matriculating late in the process to Michigan, really right before the season? It's kind of interesting how this whole process kind of opened up. He went into the transfer portal just a couple of weeks ago. Turns out he's a graduate, but again, and this is a guy, if I remember correctly, Anthony, Yabi was heavily pursued by Michigan 5 years ago.
Yeah, I do recall that Michigan was right up there. If they weren't number 2, they weren't far behind Alabama. So in terms of how it affects their edge rush position right now, I think that their interest in him kind of goes back a little further. Obviously, I mean, they've always kind of kept tabs on him, given that he was a 2018 guy they recruited, and his head coach in high school is on Michigan staff right now, as a support staff guy. So, it seems like they've always kind of kept tabs on his progress and what he's been up to. The timing of it is crazy. I mean, they play a game in 15 days. So it's one of those things where he was just put on the roster last night, assuming that he hasn't practiced yet. Maybe he gets out there today. It's kind of nuts. And I don't think he's the guy that they're going to rely on to come in and, all right, you're out. We're going to slap you in the 2 deep. We're going to have you get after the quarterback, and that's what it's going to be. They're going to start him at the back of the line, and he's going to have to work his way up. And, I know he's had a lot of, he had the issues at Alabama. He had issues at Houston, but it really does seem like somewhere, maybe it was during that COVID season that he had to sit out due to transfer rules, but he gets to UT Martin. It seems like, he finally gets on the field consistently. He plays well. He finds a way to graduate. Things seem like they've kind of settled down there. So, I don't know. I mean, at worst for Michigan, it just doesn't work out, and maybe it's just a place for him that it continues to be a calming presence in his life as things kind of settle down and you mature and you grow up. I mean, Michigan is kind of a transformational institution in that way for a lot of what it does for people. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, at best, he blows everyone out of the water. He finds that potential. I know he's down to Michigan put him on the roster last night. He's down to 245, which his last listed weight was 270. So he's in shape. He looks like he'll be able to handle whatever's thrown his way. I wouldn't be surprised to see him by Big Ten play kind of be more of a contributor, but it's going to be tough for him to make an impact, 2 weeks before kickoff and just shoot up the depth chart. There's a lot of work to do there still, but, a rising tide lifts all boats, and if they have to replace the guys they do, there's not a lot of returning production in that edge rusher room. I think competition is good for everyone, and you see what happens from there. But you just hope that he's able to kind of continue on this path of peace and maturity and all those other things, and that the past is kind of behind him.
And I think it's interesting, and that you dropped that tidbit before. You just gave us some insight into the journey for Yabi Anoma to Ann Arbor, but I know this is his second tour of duty with them, but having his former coach, or co-head coach anyway, Biff Poggi from St. Francis, now back at Michigan as the associate head coach, I think that's a big probably factor and a big comfort zone for Yabi coming to Ann Arbor.
I think so too. I mean, I think that's almost the direct reason. And there are people, on our message board or in Twitter mentions who are going, look at what's the deal with all this bad baggage? Why would you take a shot at that guy? We've talked about, it kind of brings full circle what we were talking about here earlier about Jim Harbaugh and getting things back on track at Michigan. They have been so deliberate and so careful about the changes they've made to the culture that's been built and put into place, and everyone's in a really good place right now. So if you trust your head coach, and your head coach trusts Biff Poggi and some of the other St. Francis guys on the roster, you make the move and you see what happens from there. If you trust the guy, you trust your culture, I think you make the move. And not everything has to make one-to-one football sense. I know it's kind of crazy. Former 5-star guy, fourth school in 5 years. All the factors that are surrounding it. But sometimes timing isn't always the most ideal or make the most sense. So both sides are hoping that they can kind of turn a corner here with each other, and even like I said, even if it doesn't pan out on the football field, that Ayabe is able to continue to he'll be in grad school, he can get a master's degree in something, and it doesn't all just have to be about football, which I know is might be blasphemy on the airwaves when I'm speaking right now. But when you look at the individual and the stuff he's been through, I don't think Michigan's bringing him in expecting him to be the third best player in the country like he was coming out of high school. I think he's just a body that they see talent. They think he might be able to help them if he finds a role on the field, and we'll see what happens from there.
Well, I know this. I'm friends with one of your colleagues at on3sports.com. He does a great job as the national college football reporter, Matt Zenitz, and I know he did a piece earlier in the summer with under-the-radar guys that NFL scouts were tracking, and Ayabe was one of them before he left UT Martin. And I know this. The brief times we saw him in an Alabama uniform, you could see the talent. And you could see it at times with the 6 sacks last year at UT Martin. He has some ability. So I think it's a good gamble for Michigan, especially with Coach Biff Poggi, who we've had on my sister station, ESPN 97.7 The Zone's Talking Ball, and Shane Lee, Ayabe, all these guys. He's got one of his guys, Darian Dalcourt, who's going to be the center at Alabama, who's a St. Francis guy. So Coach knows talent, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. And then I guess also, Anthony, as far as expectations for this Michigan team, as you said, they're in a much better place. There's a lot of confidence. They beat Ohio State. Is the expectation that they can once again contend for the Big Ten championship? I know Ohio State seems to be the big favorite, but what are the expectations for Michigan going into this season in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, even with what they lost from last year, this is still a pretty deep and pretty good roster at a lot of positions. Namely, I think the offense will be better. Defensively, I think, I don't want to disrespect the guys on last year's team, but I feel like that was kind of a defense that had a couple stars on it, and that just made everyone else better. Well, I do think they're going to be stars on this team, guys that will emerge, like a Mozzie Smith, like a Junior Colson at linebacker. DJ Turner's one of the best coverage corners in college football. I think they'll be able to share that burden of losing that star power as a unit. I think they're younger, but I think they're a little more athletic. I think physically they all a little more looked apart. Yeah, the expectation is, and this is and should be the expectation every year to school like Michigan, is that when you play that game the last Saturday in November against Ohio State, whether it's in your building or this year it's in their building, you should expect to be playing for a shot at going to Indianapolis the next week, period. And when I look at this group, I think they have a shot to do that. I mean, the non-conference provides them no resistance at all. I mean, they're going to play Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn. They'll have Penn State at home. They'll have Michigan State at home. They will go play. They'll go play a tough game on the road at Iowa. That's always a bit of a rock fight. But no, I can't forget that 8 months ago when we were in Indianapolis, I saw that team barely able to complete a forward pass. So it's one of those things where the schedule sets up nicely for them. I think if they're able to just kind of take things 1 week at a time and just keep getting better, you don't have to be the team that is a playoff caliber team in week one. But I think they have enough there talent-wise. I think they have enough with how the schedule plays out where I wouldn't be surprised to see them undefeated or 10-1 going into that Ohio State game. And if that's what you're sitting at, then you control your own destiny going up against your biggest rival. And I think that's really all you could ask for if you're a Michigan fan.
Well, and Anthony, I know Deuce Spurlock was part of a top 10 class at Michigan on on3sports.com. I think they finished 9th in the On3 composite rankings. As far as I know, you guys, as you said, there's not a lot of buzz from the standpoint of the coaching staff when you ask about freshmen. They just talk about them progressing. But as far as names that you may be hearing, some buzz coming out of fall camp, who are some of the guys? I know you said Deuce more than likely may have to play special teams, may be a year away from maybe being a factor on the depth chart. Who are some of the newcomers, though, going into this season from that class that we may see on the field?
Yeah, I think the first one that pops out is wide receiver Darius Clemens. I mean, they're pretty deep at wide receiver, but, he's 6'3", 210, I think it is. He runs, I believe, a laser time, just 4.4 40 or somewhere in that range. And he's looked the part. He's been blocking in fall camp from what we've heard. He's doing all the little things. He's forcing his way out of the field. So we're going to see him, actually a couple defensive tackles. Kenneth Grant, a guy out of Indiana he's 6'4", 350. And they said that the way he moves, he moves like, if some of his athletic stuff was tested like the NFL Combine last year, he would have been up there with guys in terms of the short speed, the agility, things like that. So Jim Harbaugh referred to a player at Big Ten Media Days as a gift from the football god. We strongly believe he was the guy. Crazy thing is, he was only a 3-star out of Indiana, just a big nose tackle. So it's one of those things where, when you look at those kind of 3-star guys like Deuce, Michigan's done a pretty good job of hitting on those guys. So when they think they have a diamond in the rough, which, if you're a Deuce Spurlock fan, should give you some optimism that he's going to find his way into the field at Michigan. But Mason Graham, another defensive tackle out of Anaheim, I think he's just so advanced, a former high school wrestler, so he just looks the part. He's going to factor in. Will Johnson, 5-star cornerback right out of their own backyard. If he's not their number 2 cornerback, I wouldn't be surprised if he'll be there by the end of the season. He's going to play a lot. So they have a nice little core of contributors from this class and the last one that, this year the recruiting they've had some struggles with NIL and, the NFL stuff with Harbaugh and some of the coaching changes. But this 2021 and 2022 classes have kind of built a nice little core of what could be a fruitful few years for the program. And, we'll see what happens from there. But they got a good group and talent in all 4 classes this year.
No doubt. In the last few minutes with Anthony Broome of the Wolverine On 3, part of On3Sports.com. So going in with this 23 class right now, it's at, I think, 24th in the composite rankings for On 3 Sports. What are the expectations going forward for the recruiting class? And I'm glad you brought up NIL. How is the NIL being handled by Jim Harbaugh? Nick Saban has been outspoken, as you know, and is not paying up front, so to speak, as we've heard with the Texas A&Ms and the Texases, and even Tennessee has made headlines. Louisville in Miami. It seems as though Nick Saban, wanting to do things a different way. And with his NIL program, they started High Tide Traditions. He's wanting to, do things, and I guess the best way to put it would be to take care of the entire program, have everyone have a piece of the pie, and then your stars, your Bryce Youngs, your Will Andersons, or your Aiden Hutchinsons, for example, reap a lot of the benefits and earn it. But how is Jim Harbaugh handling the NIL situation?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think this is the fascination with how Jim Harbaugh is viewed nationally, is that typically when he says something, like the big storyline with NIL this offseason was that he's been saying that they want the University of Michigan to be a transformational, not transactional experience, meaning that we're not just going to pay you to come, period. And he's caught a lot of crap for that. But that's not all in I've heard Nick Saban say similar things. We're not just going to pay you to come here. We can make sure you get paid once you're here because we have, we feel like we have a strong program in place, things like that.
Oh, yes.
So, Jim Harbaugh tends to be the lightning rod for things like that. And that's nothing new. That's been going on for 7 or 8 years since he's been at Michigan. That's how it goes. We're used to it at this point. But his approach is, at Big Ten Media Days, he held court and speaking with the media during his podium session, and he's throwing stuff out there like the Big Ten should share revenue with the players on their next TV deal, and they want their guys to get paid. and they know, the University of Michigan not only has one of the best business schools in the world, it also has one of the largest alumni bases in the world, period. I mean, there's not a place you can go in this country and wear a Michigan hat and not get a Go Blue. So they've got a pretty wide-ranging reach, and I think Michigan's struggles with NIL have been more from an administrative perspective. We had a sit-down with Juwan Howard last week, and even he said he thinks Michigan can do better. I think the athletic department has some work to do there. I think their leadership in that aspect has been a little more reactive than it is proactive, and they need boosters to step up. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you want to compete in whatever this next era of college sports looks like, you're gonna have to pay up. But the thing of it too is that you're gonna reap the benefits of that too, because everyone's gonna be making a lot more money. So that's kind of where it is. I think that Jim Harbaugh more or less has been pretty supportive of it. I think he caught some unwarranted crap for the messaging. But it's not all unlike what other schools have said. But because it's Jim Harbaugh and because it's Michigan, it's seen as pompous and holier than thou. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I know he's been off the record. I know he's shared with people that there have been some frustrations with NIL, and it needs to get better at Michigan, period. It's not a Jim Harbaugh thing. It's not a football thing. They can do better in all sports, and I do think that the wheels are in motion for them to do that.
Well, it sounds a lot like what's going on at Alabama. So really fascinating to see it happening up in Ann Arbor as well. And then finally, last question, with the recruiting class, I know they certainly don't expect to finish 24th. They'd like it to be up in the top 10 in the country again. Where are things trending right now with the recruiting class? Because we've seen Alabama, they've gone from in the 40s to number 1. They've already got 20 pledges, and they're getting a lot of the hay in the barn already. What's the expectation for this recruiting class at Michigan? But as you said, Michigan's done a great job, not necessarily of getting the 5-star guys, but finding guys like a Deuce Spurlock who are under the radar and become very good players.
Yeah, I think things have, it's almost September, and things have started so slow for them. I think it's going to be tough for them to finish inside the top 10. I think they could push for top 15, get somewhere in that 12-13 range. Part of it is they lost a lot. They did lose a lot of. This should have been last season. Should have been a season where the recruiting was. I mean, everything had picked up as much as it possibly could coming off a season like that. And then Harbaugh flirts with the Minnesota Vikings. You're replacing 2 coordinators. NIL stuff hasn't moved at a pace that it needs to move. So they started this class just a little behind the curve, and it's going to take a big effort, which could just mean winning games. I mean, they closed out strong at the end of last season, where they were able to bring in a Darius Clement and Derek Moore and a Keon Saab and Zeke Berry. So, that little post, that December period before the early signing day, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a push and add some more big guys and make a push for that top 15. But they just started so behind the 8 ball in this class that I think this one, you're not going to I don't call it a throwaway, but it's just not. It just won't be up to the par of what some of these other classes have been, and that's disappointing. But most of that was self-inflicted, so they have to figure it out on their end.
Well, Anthony, we appreciate the time and the insight, and we're certainly excited for Deuce's opportunity. We're going to follow his career very closely, and we're very intrigued to see what Ayabi and Noma can do. We really think a lot of Biff Poggi and what he's able to accomplish at St. Francis and being back at Michigan. But thank you for the insight, and we have some Michiganders here in our community that are big parts of our radio station that are big Michigan fans, and I'm sure they're going to enjoy hearing from you. But let everybody know how to follow your coverage.
Yeah, so you can follow all of our stuff over at thewolverine.com. We're on the On3 network, so we're still running our deal where you can if you're a Michigan fan, you can get on the site for $1, buys an entire year's subscription. I mean, it is the best deal in college sports media, in my biased opinion. It makes it kind of hard to put food in my dog's bowl, but that's fine. We'll figure that out at a later date. So that's where you can find our work. You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony T. Broom. That's where I primarily post over there. So, yeah, if you're a Michigan fan down in SEC country, we'd love to have you. We we're doing super well since we made the transition over to the new network last year, and we'd love you to be a part of it.
Yeah, we definitely have some that will, and they'll look forward to hearing from you today and talking some Wolverines. We thank you. We look forward to connecting down the road, but appreciate the time and have a great weekend.
Of course, anytime. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We're going to go on a break and wrap up this week of the Recruiting Blitz on the Blitz Sports Radio, the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. Stay with us.
The Blitz has been called.
With us today, Dr. Tracy Lowry of Best Vein Care of Huntsville.
When we evaluate a patient and they indeed have significant venous disease, most third-party payers, private insurance, Medicare, require us to treat every patient conservatively at least 90 days. Conservative treatment includes increasing ambulation, elevation of the legs, and the wearing of compression stockings. It's very common for folks to come see us in March or April wanting to have their veins fixed before they go into swimsuits starting in June. When we see someone in March or April, they're going to require at least 90 days of conservative treatment before we can even go to the insurance carrier to get permission to treat their veins. So if you think you have a venous problem, now is the time to come in and get a free screening so we can determine whether or not you need something evaluated. If you have a vein problem or you think you may have a vein problem, now's the time to contact us at bestveincarehuntsville.com.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
TOC Sports has been there for you. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? It means for more than 20 years, Alabama's largest orthopedic group has been there providing coverage and care to more schools and student athletes in the Tennessee Valley than any other group. It means whether you are the star football player, the all-region volleyball ace, or someone who hurt their knee in a weekend pickup basketball game, TOC Sports physicians are proud to have the opportunity to care for all your orthopedic needs. It means for parents, coaches, athletes, desk jockeys, or even weekend warriors, TOC Sports physicians continue to meet and exceed the orthopedic and sports medicine needs of our community. But most importantly, during these challenging times, we're here for you now and will continue to be here. So as long as there are players on the field, games to be played, and contests to be won, the orthopedic specialists from TOC Sports will be ready to help. We don't know what the future holds, but you can count on the TOC Sports team to stay committed to you so you can stay in the game. Call 256-539-2728 today and ask to see a TOC Sports physician. Check them out online, also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Wrapping up another week of the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond on the Blitz Sports Radio. What a great conversation with Anthony Broome, the Wolverine on 3 Sports. The Michigan Wolverines are kind of a polarizing program. I mean, Jim Harbaugh seemed to be on the hot seat before last season. They catch fire. They win the Big Ten. Now he has a new contract. Everything seems to have flipped. They come get Deuce Spurlock from the state of Alabama. We're very excited for Deuce. But again, we really appreciate Anthony Broome in that segment. He gave us quite a bit of his time this morning, and we look forward to connecting with him down the road as well. But again, the Michigan beat writer for the Wolverine on 3, part of on3sports.com. We talk some Michigan Wolverines, and we're going to talk recruiting from a national perspective, especially when it connects to our state and our community, as it did with Deuce Spurlock. And so we wanted to talk some Michigan and Yabi Anoma, because, again, he's a guy that Yabi that was a 5-star kid, a big part of Alabama football at one time, and now has matriculated to Michigan. But again, it's been another great week of the Recruiting Blitz here on Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, the first weekend of high school football. We had some last night. We'll have some tonight, first full Friday, and we'll have some college football starting next week. But we'll be talking with you again on the Blitz on Monday and the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared, and you'll have the Blitz later today from 2 to 4 with our Cavalcade of Stars. So please tune in for that, and we'll continue to bring recruiting conversation Monday through Friday on the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. But have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday.
In sport,